Hey Graham, this is Chris with your Star Wars app API code review. So first off, before we get started, there's kind of three things I want you to think about. Number one, when you're watching this, please have 100% focus on the video. All right, you have your headphones in, you're focused on the screen, you're seeing what I'm doing, you're not eating, you're not going for a jog, right? So 100% focus on this code review. That's number one. Number two, after I post this code review in Slack, please feel free to reach out to me and ask questions. And then number three, a couple weeks or a couple months from now, once you have gotten some more experience underneath your belt, come back to this review and watch it. You know, you'll always be able to learn something new, especially coming at it with fresh eyes. All right. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the code review itself. So let's start out with your README. It looks like you did a really good job of following the template that Andy gives you to follow for README. The only thing I would say is that down here in the right-hand corner, to make sure that you have your websites like your LinkedIn or whatever personal website you have, right? Besides that, it looks really great. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that off. Now, looking at your app, the UI is awesome, right? The functionality looks really great. I like the epic background that you have. That looks like it's not fully showing up down there. I think it might be, yeah, because of the screen. You haven't made it responsive yet. That's okay. But besides that, the background looks great. When you refresh the page or reload the page, you did a component mount and you're getting all your different characters. Right, you can search for a character. So, for example, if I want to search for Luke Skywalker, right, the functionality works there really quickly. I'm going to reload the screen, get all the characters back, and you can also toggle between different pages and get different characters returned back from the swapy.dev API. Now, when in terms of your actual code, really starting with your file structure, I liked your file structure. I think you named your files appropriately and you broke apart your logic appropriately, right? You broke apart the search component, the table component, right? And you have your loading spinner, right? So very logical in terms of how you're breaking apart your actual UI, right? And that's how you want to do it according to the React docs. Now let's actually dive into the code itself. So first off, I'm going to go through just a couple little nitpicks, and then I'm going to dive into hammering in the main point of this code review, which is going to be dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself, right? And you'll understand what I mean by that more in a little bit. Let's just start out with some initial nitpicks. Hold on, let me get some water real quick. Mouth is getting dry from all the talking. This is actually my second time through this. The first time I did a Loom video, and Loom wasn't able to upload it, so it's a big letdown. But anyways, let's start up here, lines 10 and 11, and your app component. Make sure you're always passing in props to your constructor and to the super as well, right? That's just convention, and you want to make sure to follow convention as much as possible, right? That's pretty much a little nitpick here. When you go to your name search, the only thing I have here is line 5 in your render method in the where you usually put your parameters. You don't want to pass in properties here, right? You don't pass in props. Sorry, you don't pass in props, which does stand for properties, into your render method, right? Going into your characters table, you were getting an error for this unused constructor, right? Because you're not setting any states or any instance variables in it. So I'm just going to remove that because it's pretty much useless. And then here for this tables row variable, right? You're doing an unnecessary if-else check, okay? Because map, if it's mapping over an empty array, which you're checking if it is an empty array up here, will just return an empty array, right? So that means down here on line 37, if it's empty arrays being interpolated with these brackets, then nothing will show on the screen, okay? So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this map method right here and this table rows variable being not evaluate, reset, and I'm going to set the tables row to that map, right? And now it's when it reloads, why is it not reloading? command R. When it reloads, it still works. Great. Going back to your app.js component, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this code review, which is going to be the principle dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. Sorry, which is kind of true. It's mainly true, but there's times when you do want to repeat yourself, and you do want to repeat yourself when you're kind of getting going, right? So we're just kind of writing the initial code out for whatever thing you're trying to develop. You just kind of write out, you know, I need this pattern for this, I need this pattern for this, I need this pattern for this. And then usually what happens is you write multiple lines of code, write multiple functions, right? And you take a step back and you look at all the stuff you've written so far, and you'll see patterns that have been repeated, okay? And then what that's telling you is once you see a pattern that's repeated over and over again, you want to abstract away, right? Take all that information and then put it into a function and then call that function in all those places that it was being repeated, right? This is how you keep your code base as clean and as lean as possible, which is very hard to do, right? So let's go ahead and let's try that out here. So in your component did mount, you have this for loop, right? You're looping over the results that you get from calling your Axios, right? And for each one of those results, which is actually a character, you're getting the character's species and the character's homeworld, right? Let's go down a little bit and list in this search by name method, asynchronous method. In here, you're getting a result, right? And you're doing a for loop over those results, right? For those characters. And you're setting the character species and the character's homeworld. Let's go down a little bit more. In this navigate function, you're using a for loop to loop over results, setting the species and the homeworld for each one of those characters, right? I think you get my point. In 3 different places, you are doing exactly the same thing. So what this means is, like I said, you want to take this repeated code and you're going to abstract this away into a function, right? And this is going to cause our code to break. That's totally fine. I'm just going to go right down here. And since this is going to, it's going to be an asynchronous function, I'm going to start with the async keyword. I'm going to call this get character species and home. I'll just call it species and home, right? I might even call this get char. That might be get character species and home is fine. Now I'm going to do the open and close brackets, and inside the body of this method, I'm going to paste all that code that I took from our component did mount lifecycle method, right? So in here, the result is set to the people response data.results, what that evaluates to. So I'm going to pass in as an argument to this get character species and home, right, the people response, right? So, and inside of this right here, to the body of this method, I'm going to now return the result, right? Now, when we are back up into this component did mount, and we set let result equal, we set this variable called result, right, set to the return value of this get characters and species and home asynchronous method, we are going to break our code. Oh, get characters is not defined. Oh, that's because I need to make sure to call it on this. Right now, it's going to break our code. And boom, result is not defined. Oop, that's not the right result. Result, what do you mean result's not defined? Result. Oh, let me refresh it again. And awesome. This.props characters.map is not a function. And the reason why you're getting this is because an asynchronous function returns a promise. And you're going to be able to see that in a little bit. Comment out this code. Put up console.log. result, result, right? I'm going to resave this app and make this console a little bit bigger. It's down here, result, that's telling me it's this console. It's a promise, it's pending. I'm going to open up the promise. Promise has two different properties. First is the promise state. Our promise state is fulfilled, and the promise result, which is an array of 10. I'm going to open up this promise result, and there we go. I get an array of 10 Star Wars characters. And that's exactly what I want, right? So what I'm going to do right now is, since it's a promise, that means I can use a .then. And by the way, it's okay to use awaits with .then, right? And even kind of make your code look a little bit cleaner. You can use both of them, right? Awaits are just meant to kind of clean up, solve a problem with the .then chaining, right? People are chaining .thens a lot, right? So await kind of cleans up the code a little bit, allowing you, it's essentially just syntactic sugar for the .then method, right? So here we go. So with our .then, for each one of these characters, not for each one of the characters, but for the characters, for this array of 10, what are we going to do? We are going to, oops, sorry, there you go. We're going to take all these setting states you have right here, take those, go inside the body of this callback for this then, right? And inside the body, we're going to set the state of all the characters to these characters, right? And I'm not going to set it to the result, which you can, because a result again is a promise, right? And we want to set it to the array, which is what we're getting right here from these characters. So what I'm going to use is going to use the ES6 shorthand property syntax. And what this allows us to do is essentially this is going to read characters like this, just like this, right? And this makes your code look even cleaner. So I'm going to remove that. And there we go. And now when I refresh the screen, let's test it out. And boom, looks like it's working. Oops. Awesome. Exactly what you want. So let's clean this up right here. Component did mount. And look how much cleaner our component did mount now looks, because we abstracted a lot of this information away, right? And now we're going to do the same thing with the other parts of the code that was repeating this code. Let's go and go down to the next part, which is going to be this search by name. So let's go ahead and let's comment actually all of this out. Boom, right? And I'm going to set the result to this character species at home people response, which we're getting from right here on line 69 inside the search by name method, asynchronous method. I'm going to take all your state settings, put them inside of that, and comment out the code here. And then I'm going to change this result to just characters, so that way you can use the ES6 property shorthand syntax. And this is search by name. So let's go ahead and try it out to make sure that it works. I'll search Luke, and Luke shows up. And by the way, you don't have to clear the characters like this. State will automatically be cleared right here, right? So let's try it one more time. Type in Luke, and Luke shows up. Awesome. So I'm going to remove all this code right here. Cool. And then the last place we have this is all the way down here in this navigate function, right? You're doing the same thing like we talked about earlier, for starting with result all the way down to this big line of set states. I'm actually going to comment all of this out right here. Do the same thing we've been doing so far, the last two functions. Oopsie, I forgot to grab it. So I'm going to go back up to set search by name, grab our lines of code. Let's go down to the navigate method, put in the code we've been copying. Awesome. And now I'm going to take all these set states here, come up into the callback of our then, comment out all this code, clean up my lines. Cool. Set characters to characters. Boom. And now I'm going to check if our navigation still works. Go down, next page, loading, loading, loading. Boop, boop, boop. Awesome. Looks like it does work. Sweet. This means that I can clear out all of this. Boom, boom. Great. So that's it for refactoring of that code. There's one more duplicate work you're doing, and that's going to be right here inside your species LU and your homeworld LU, right? In both of these, you are doing essentially exactly the same thing. And what you're essentially doing is making a cache. Now, by the way, this cache only works for when you're searching a character by name. It's not really necessary for you. Well, you can't really use this cache when you do your component mount because you're saving these characters within your state. And your state is reset every time your component is unmounted and remounted, right? So if you actually want to make a cache that saves in between page refreshes, or reloads rather, you need to make sure to save those characters within something that persists, like local storage or database, right? And I actually implemented it with local storage, and I can show that to you if you want me to. You can ask me to send those lines of code to you. There's a couple lines I didn't fully understand how I did it. I didn't feel comfortable explaining it to you. So now let's get to refactoring these two methods right here, right? I'm gonna go down. What I'm first gonna do is I'm gonna copy your homeworld LU method. I'm going to change this into just called get cached, right? Get cached, which is kind of what we're doing. Are we getting? Yeah, we're kind of getting, and we're also kind of shaving. Yeah, so get get owned, like the same thing. We're also getting it, so maybe it kind of applies in both ways. But we're going to passing in our URL, and then we're also going to be passing in our saved cache name, right? Or I'll just call this cache name. Okay, so you'll see when we're doing this just right, actually right now. So actually before I do that, I'm going to change this cache worlds, right? Because we're not just going to be caching the worlds with this. This is going to be a function that's going to be able to cache both species and worlds. So we want this to be more of a generic name. So I'm just going to call this cache. Boom. F2 cache. This should change all occurrences of that. Awesome, it does. Next, I'm going to take this cache name and I'm going to access a particular property from my state. Instead of using the dot notation, I can use the bracket notation, right? And I'm actually going to be passing this in as a string. And you can totally use strings in the bracket notation to access properties within the state, right? So cache name, cache. Once we find it, if we find it, then we're just going to return it down here. If we don't find it, we're going to go get it, right? So with this home world right here, variable declare, we actually don't need this, but I'm actually going to change it up here. Instead of home world, I'm actually going to change this to result, right? And then I'm going to clear this out. So that's going to change home world in all different places. And now we're getting a bunch of errors. And now I'm going to define result right here. Now result is defined in two places. That's these two places down here. We actually don't need this return statement to be here, right? And we actually don't even need this else statement either. All we need to return at the bottom is going to be this entry.name. The reason is that if it's undefined, we're going to go and we're going to return the result of this Axios method.get method call, right? And so that will pull us out of this, that will return us out of this block. If it is defined, then we just need to return the entry.name, which we find in the cache, right? Cool. So it's still working because we haven't even implemented this at all. So what we're going to do next is, so we're getting the results, we're getting the data, we're pushing the results. Now, right here, we need to make sure that we're setting the cache name, right? We're setting the appropriate cache, which is going to be this right here, right? So we're pushing to the old cache, and technically every time you set the state, you should set the state with a copy of the old state. You should not be mutating the current state, right? So that means what I'm going to be doing here, I'm taking this, and we're using the ES6 spread operator to take all the properties within the old array. That's going to spread it out into this new array, right? So that way we're not mutating the old state. We're pushing to that cache, right? That cache that we just got. They're setting the state with that cache, and then we're going to return just the results.name. We don't need to do this unnecessary variable reassignment. So, boom. Response.data, results.name, results.name. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. So let's go ahead and let's take this get cached method we just defined on our app component. Let's go up to our get character species and home. Let's first try this species LU. I'm just going to put this get cached right there. I'm going to take these lines of code, the results bracket I index at index I dot species, which is going to be our URL for our species, right? I'm going to take that, and then for this cache name, I'm just going to go up, see, species cache, right? One or two. Where's the other one? There it is. Yeah, it is species cache. Cool. I'm going to see get cached right here in our on line 49 in our get cache, where we're calling it get cached. I'm now going to pass in a string that's the name of the cache that we are trying to save this species to, which is to our species cache. So now, whoopsie, cache name is not defined. Where's cache name? Species. Oh, and you refresh it again. Loading, loading, loading. Boom. Looks like our species is loading just fine. That's exactly what we want. And I'm going to do the same thing right here for this home world. Call this get cached. And I'll pass in. I think for this you call this home worlds cache. Yeah, that's what it is. So I'll take that. Go to my component. No, I want to go to my get characters, species, and home. Pass in the home worlds cache. Pass it in as a string. Awesome. It's loading. Looks like all my home worlds, right, are being loaded. And are they being cached? Let's go ahead and check. Let's go into our React Dev Tools components. Let's go to our app, species cache. Boom, it's getting cached. URL is an array. All right. And then here, home worlds cache. Awesome. URL is not an array. Huh, interesting. Why is droid an array? And droids are array, but the rest are not. Did you have a special line? Oh well. Most of it's being saved correctly. Maybe you can go in and you can figure out why this droid, this URL has been an array. Well, it looks like the rest are working. But overall, it looks like we're getting what we want to get, right? The app is still loading, nothing's breaking. Let's see if our cache loads. I think for you, when it loads is when, right, I'm going to get a character Luke, it should load really fast, boom, right? And we can double check if the cache did that, because let's do another search for Luke. Let's actually clear this out. I'm in my network tab, in my Chrome developer tools. In here, I'm going to clear it out. I'm going to do another search. And you'll see that I'm searching for planets, right, which is what you get for Homeworld, and nothing shows up as being called over the network, right? That means it's being pulled from our cache. I mean, the same thing with species. Boom. It looks like nothing's being pulled over cache. We can see that something is being called over the network. The search is being called, right? Which is great, because that's what you're doing down here in search by name. This is the URL, you're using the search URL, right? So that means our cache is working, and that's what we set up right here. Cool. So, yeah, like I said, this was the main focus for my refactoring, which is the principle of try, which means essentially don't repeat yourself. And what I did was I looked over places in your code. So 3 different places for the first code that I refactored into, that I abstracted away to a get character species home, and then 2 places where I abstracted away, abstracted away into the get cached, right? And so I can actually now delete the 2 places that we're using was there, and the species in Homeworld, which was there. Good. Boom, 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 boom. Clear the lines, make it look good. Clear the lines, make it look good. Oopsie. Search Luke. Boom. Luke searching and no calls over the wire. That's exactly what we want to see. All right. Well, if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to post in the Slack. But that's all I have for you today.